Arcos was dying. The planet groaned under its thin atmosphere, its winds carrying whispers of sand and decay. Beneath the protective curve of the biodome, humanity clung to a fragile existence. The air was stale, recycled 1,000 times over. Farms eked out meager crops under artificial lights. The silence was suffocating, punctuated only by the hum of the dome's shields, faint and fragile like the breath of a wounded beast. Aaron was halfway through another interminable shift in the outpost's watchtower when the alarm broke through his monotony. It wasn't the usual warning klaxon, signaling an approaching storm or another fissure in the colony's failing infrastructure. No, this sound was deeper, more insistent, as if the planet itself was groaning in protest. He bolted upright, his chair scraping against the metal floor, and stared out into the endless expanse of ochre wilderness. Nothing moved. The wasteland stretched out before him, jagged rocks silhouetted against the faint glow of Arcos's dying sun. But something felt wrong. The horizon shimmered unnaturally, a ripple of movement too deliberate to be the wind. "Aaron, report," came the voice of Administrator Kale through the comms, sharp and commanding. I don't know yet," Aaron stammered, his eyes darting across the barren expanse. His fingers danced over the controls, adjusting the tower's sensors. The screen flickered to life, displaying grainy readings. Heat signatures, multiple. Too many. "Administrator," he said, his voice tight with unease, "I think something's out there." Silence answered him. Not the static hum of an interrupted connection, but a weighted pause that prickled the back of his neck. When Kale finally spoke, her voice was low. "Stay where you are. I'm sending a scout team." Aaron swallowed, gripping the edge of the console. Stay where he was, in this glass box perched atop the dome's perimeter, a perfect target for whatever was out there? He wanted to protest, but the sight on the horizon held him captive. The ripples had grown sharper, their movements more defined. Shapes emerged, tall, angular, their forms shimmering like fractured light. Then they stopped. For a moment, everything was still. Aaron held his breath. The silence felt alive, stretching taut as if the very air were waiting for something to snap. And then it did. The shapes moved with impossible speed, closing the distance toward the dome in the blink of an eye. The tower shook as a concussive blast rippled through the air. Aaron's instincts kicked in. He slammed the alarm, his voice shouting into the comms, "Hostiles, they're—" The rest of his words drowned in the deafening roar of the biodome's shield flaring to life. A wave of blue energy crackled across the dome's surface, halting the attackers mere meters from its edge. Their forms came into focus, sleek, obsidian armor that seemed to absorb light, eyes glowing a faint violet. Zainari. Aaron had never seen one in person, but the stories were enough. They were the galaxy's enforcers, a species bred for war and precision. But why were they here? Arcos was insignificant, a forgotten colony on the edge of a dying star. The shield pulsed again, brighter this time, forcing the Zainari back. They didn't retreat far, just enough to regroup. As Aaron watched, one of them stepped forward, a figure taller than the rest, its presence commanding even through the distortion of the shield. "What do you want?" Aaron muttered under his breath, though he knew they couldn't hear him. The answer came not from the Zainari, but from the comms crackling back to life. "Stand down," a voice said, smooth and unfamiliar. Aaron froze. It wasn't Administrator Kale. The voice had an edge to it, a tone that carried authority, but also something else, something alien. And then, impossibly, the figure outside the dome spoke. "Lower your shield. I am not your enemy." The words came in perfect human English, resonating through the biodome systems as if the Zainari had tapped directly into their communications. Aaron's breath caught. Not your enemy? Then why the attack? Why the show of force? He turned to the console, desperate to make sense of the readings, but as he scanned the data, his stomach sank. The Zainari weren't attacking the dome. They were shielding themselves from something approaching them from behind, A shadow moved across the horizon, vast and formless, blotting out the sun. It flowed like liquid darkness, its edges flickering in and out of existence. The Zanari turned to face it, their posture shifting from aggression to defense. Aaron's heart pounded. If the Zanari, the most feared warriors in the galaxy, were preparing for battle, what could possibly be worse? The voice from the comms came again, sharper this time. "Administrator Kyle," the Zanari leader said, as if addressing her directly. "I am Kayla of the Zanari. Open your gates. If you want to survive, you'll need me inside." Kayla. The name rippled through the colony's memory like a ghost. Legends spoke of her, a rogue warrior, exiled from her people for reasons shrouded in secrecy. Some called her a traitor, others whispered of her impossible victories in battles long forgotten. But why would she come here of all places? "Administrator, respond," Aaron urged, his voice cracking with urgency. For a moment, there was no answer. Then Kale's voice returned, heavy with disbelief. "Let her in," she said. Aaron's hands hovered over the controls, hesitating. Letting the Zainari in was one thing, letting her in was something else entirely. But as the shadow drew closer, its form twisting and reaching as if it were alive, he had no choice. With a trembling hand, he deactivated the shield. The gates hissed open, and Kayla stepped inside. Aaron stared at her, his breath catching. She was tall, her obsidian armor shimmering like oil slick under the biodome's artificial lights. Her eyes met his, violet and unblinking, with a depth that seemed to pierce straight through him. "You don't need to fear me," she said, her voice as steady as the ground beneath her feet. "But you do need to listen." Behind her, the shadow loomed larger, its presence oppressive. And as it crept closer to the biodome, Aaron realized the Zainari weren't the only threat on Arcos. Whatever was out there, it wasn't just coming for them. It was already here. The gates of the biodome shuddered closed behind Kayla, sealing the Zainari warrior inside the colony's fragile walls. Aaron couldn't shake the tension in his chest, the weight of the decision still heavy on his shoulders. For all the legends, all the whispers about Kayla, he had never imagined her standing before him, her dark armor glinting ominously in the dim light of the colony's interior. She was an enigma, tall, poised, and so perfectly alien that she seemed to belong to a world beyond their understanding. Yet, in a way, she belonged to Arcos now. The shield flickered one last time as it powered down, leaving them exposed to whatever horrors were out there. "Follow me," Kayla commanded without waiting for a response. Her voice was firm, carrying the authority of someone who had been in control for far too long. She turned and walked toward the command center, her steps light but purposeful. Aaron stood frozen for a moment, caught in the gravity of her presence. He wasn't sure what had just happened, if he had made the right call, if the colony was safer now, or if they just welcomed their doom inside. He glanced at the towering shadow still lingering on the horizon outside. Even through the thick dome, it seemed to pulse with malevolent intent. His stomach twisted. What is it? He couldn't shake the thought. The shadow seemed to breathe, shifting unnaturally like it was alive, its edges warping in strange, erratic patterns. "Aaron," Kale's voice snapped him out of his daze. She was already halfway down the hall, her figure moving swiftly, shadows creeping along the walls behind her. Aaron cursed under his breath and sprinted to catch up, his boots echoing in the empty corridor. When he reached the command center, the atmosphere had shifted. A tense silence filled the air, thick with suspicion and anticipation. The rest of the colony's senior officers were gathered around the central table, their eyes flickering nervously between Kayla and the screens displaying data on the advancing shadow. "Administrator Kale," Aaron greeted her, though his gaze lingered on the alien warrior. "What now?" Kale turned to him, her eyes steely, unreadable. "You've made your choice. Now you'll see what happens when you trust me." The way she said it, so cold, so assured, was unsettling, as if she had seen far worse than anything Arcos could throw at her. "I need to know everything," Kale continued, her tone never wavering. The shadow approaching your dome isn't natural. Your sensors should be detecting more than just heat signatures. The officers at the table exchanged uneasy glances, none of them speaking up. It was clear they were all in over their heads. The shadow... One of the engineers, Alaric, spoke hesitantly. It's been advancing slowly for hours. We don't know what it is. No one's ever seen anything like it before. Then I suggest you start, Kayla snapped, her gaze narrowing on the screen. You need to scan it more closely. Find out what it's made of. There's something inside it. Something more dangerous than you realize. Her words felt like a warning, but it only deepened the mystery. What could be more dangerous than the Zenari themselves, the most feared species in the galaxy? Aaron wasn't sure if he was comforted by her presence or terrified by it, but the way Kayla spoke, so effortlessly commanding, hinted at a deeper knowledge, one that none of them possessed. What's inside it? Aaron asked, the words slipping out before he could stop himself. Kayla didn't answer immediately. Instead, she stood still, her face unreadable, her eyes distant as though she were listening to a voice only she could hear. It's not a what, Aaron, she said finally, her voice low and heavy. It's a who. The room fell silent. No one spoke. No one dared to. The weight of her words hung like a dark cloud over them all. A who? Aaron repeated, his voice barely above a whisper. Yes, Kayla confirmed, turning to face him fully. The shadow is controlled by someone, or something inside it, someone with enough power to command an entire storm. The silence deepened, and Aaron's mind reeled. They had known about the worsening conditions on Arcos, about the atmospheric shifts, the rogue storms that had plagued the colony for months, but to hear that someone, was orchestrating these events, it changed everything. Kayla's eyes gleamed with something unspoken, a flicker of urgency that hadn't been there before. What do we do? Alaric asked, his voice trembling. Kayla turned toward him, her expression unchanged. You keep your systems online. You keep your dome secure, but you're running out of time. Aaron stepped forward, his heart pounding in his chest. And you? What's your plan? Kayla's gaze hardened, her jaw tightening. She took a deep breath before answering, the weight of her words sinking into the room. My plan is to get us out of here, but I can't do that alone. A low murmur spread through the room. It was clear now that Kayla wasn't here as some kind of protector. She was here because she needed their help that she hadn't yet explained. But her eyes, cold and unwavering, told a different story. She was here to fight. Aaron couldn't deny it. There was something magnetic about her. Her confidence, her aura of danger. It was like she'd been forged for moments like this. But he didn't trust her. Not yet. And he wasn't sure if he ever could. Out of here? He asked, brow furrowing. Where? How? There's a ship, hidden on the far side of the colony, Kayla replied, her voice devoid of emotion. But the shadow, the one controlling it, won't let us leave without a fight, and the longer we wait, the stronger it gets. Wait, Aaron said, stepping forward. You're asking us to trust you, to follow you into battle. Yes, she said, her voice steady. Because you have no other choice. Trust me now, or die trying to survive on your own. The air in the room crackled with tension as the truth began to set in. This wasn't just about protecting the colony anymore. They had crossed into something darker, something far beyond anything they could have imagined. The stakes had changed, and they had no choice but to trust Kayla, whether they wanted to or not. Kayla turned on her heel and strode toward the door, her footsteps echoing in the silence. Follow me, she ordered, and without hesitation, Aaron did. The hum of the command center had never felt so foreign, as though the very walls were closing in on them. The air heavy with the metallic scent of machines and the faint tang of ozone buzzed with the weight of uncertainty. Kayla's sharp silhouette cut through the dim glow of screens, her presence undeniable and unsettling. Aaron stood at the edge of the command center, his eyes darting between the glowing displays and the enigmatic warrior at the center of it all. She was different now. No longer just a protector, but a force, a storm held in human form. Her cold gaze swept over the data streaming in from the colony's outer defenses, yet there was something in her expression, a flicker of unease, that unnerved him. "You said the shadow was controlled by someone," Aaron said, his voice cutting through the quiet tension, "but you didn't say who or why." Kayla didn't look up from the screen, her fingers moving with purpose, tapping in commands faster than the system could respond. "You want to know why?" Her voice was soft, almost mocking, but the edge was unmistakable. "What makes you think I know why?" Aaron's chest tightened. She had given them no answers, no clear explanation of what they were truly up against, but there was a flicker of something deep within her eyes that unsettled him. It was as if she knew more than she was letting on. He clenched his fists at his sides, feeling a surge of frustration. "You knew what you were walking into, didn't you?" His voice was raw with impatience. "You've been here longer than we thought, Kayla. And this shadow, whatever it is, has to be connected to you. I want the truth now." Kyla's lips curled into the slightest of smiles, but there was no warmth in it. "You'll have it," she said, her words clipped, before turning her gaze back to the screen. The center of the dome flickered to life, casting harsh shadows across her face. The system was detecting something close. "I need you to listen closely," Kayla continued, her voice suddenly sharper, more urgent. "I've been tracking the entity controlling the storm for weeks now. What you're facing isn't just another rogue phenomenon. It's not a natural disaster nor a simple enemy." Aaron's heart skipped. The way she spoke made it clear that she was about to reveal something that would shatter everything they had believed about their situation. "What is it, Kayla?" She turned toward him, her expression hardening, her eyes narrowing as if she were looking through him, seeing something that no one else could. "The storm," she said slowly, her words deliberate, "wasn't created by a force of nature. It was created by a person, someone with knowledge of the Zainari species, someone who understands me." Aaron's stomach twisted. He wanted to argue, to shout, to demand more answers, but the truth hung heavy in the air. The shadow outside, the one they had all feared, was not just a threat. It was personal. For Kayla, the stakes were much higher than survival. "Who?" he asked, though his voice was barely a whisper. A long silence stretched between them, broken only by the low hum of the machinery. Kayla's eyes flickered to the screen, her face hardening, as she stood silent for a moment longer. "I don't know," she said finally, her voice devoid of emotion. "But I know their intent." The room fell into silence. The realization settled in, slow and suffocating. Whoever controlled the storm was someone Kayla feared, someone from her past. But why had they come for her, and why now? Aaron's mind raced. He wanted to push further, to demand answers, but something in Kayla's demeanor held him back. The fear that lingered in her eyes spoke volumes, and it wasn't directed at the colony. It was something darker, older, something that haunted her. "Do you understand the consequences of this?" Kayla's voice broke the silence. She turned, meeting Aaron's gaze with a fiery intensity that left no room for doubt. "This isn't just about saving the colony anymore. Whoever is behind this, they have plans. Plans that involve far more than Arcos." "What do you mean?" Aaron asked, his voice trembling. Kayla's lips parted, but before she could speak, the command center shuddered, hard enough to rattle the walls. An alarm blared, high-pitched and urgent, drowning out her words. Aaron's heart pounded as the warning lights flashed, casting the room in a nightmare of red. "What is that?" Alaric shouted, panic rising in his voice as the screens flickered and shorted. The display showing the shadow on the horizon was distorted, flashing wildly, as if the very atmosphere was fighting back against the information being gathered. "It's here," Kayla said quietly, her voice tight with tension. She stepped toward the center of the room, her fingers moving over the controls, but the system failed to respond. Outside, the storm, the shadow, was closer than ever before. A vast black mass that loomed on the horizon like a living thing. Kayla's eyes locked on the screen, her jaw clenched. "Kayla?" Aaron's voice was a whisper, his fear mounting. "What is that? Why won't the system respond?" Kayla's hand froze over the controls, her knuckles white. "That's not just the storm," she said, her voice strained. "That's them." Her eyes, dark as the void outside, flicked to Aaron. "And they're coming for me." The words struck like lightning, electrifying the room. Aaron's blood ran cold as he realized the truth. The shadow wasn't just some force of nature. It was a weapon. And Kayla, the warrior they had trusted to protect them, wasn't just here as their defender. She was the key. "I can stop it," Kayla said, her voice low and determined. "But I need you to trust me. I need your help." The lights flickered again, plunging the room into darkness for a heartbeat. When they came back on, Kayla had already moved toward the door, her steps purposeful. "Follow me," she ordered, her tone unwavering. Aaron hesitated. His mind was still reeling from the revelation. The storm was coming. It wasn't just a storm, it was a battle, a war for something far greater than their colony. And Kayla? She wasn't just a warrior, she was a pawn, a target. As he turned to follow her, the weight of his decision settled over him. There was no turning back now. The true enemy had been revealed, and it was more dangerous than any of them had ever imagined. The air in the command center was thick with tension, palpable, almost suffocating. The alarm had ceased, but the low hum of machinery was a constant reminder that time was running out. Aaron's heart pounded, a wild drumbeat echoing in his chest as he paced back and forth across the narrow room. The lights flickered above him, casting long shadows that danced across the walls. Kayla was still standing at the console, her fingers moving in a blur, inputting commands, seeking something, anything that could give them a sliver of hope. He was no longer sure what to believe. The words she had spoken earlier had unraveled his understanding of everything. The storm wasn't natural. It was weaponized, a force that bent to the will of someone far more dangerous than they had anticipated. The truth was settling in, colder than the air around him. This wasn't just a battle for survival. This was a battle for existence. "Kayla," Aaron said, his voice hoarse from the weight of everything pressing down on him. "We're running out of time. Who is behind this? What are they?" Kayla's eyes didn't leave the screen as she manipulated the controls, but there was a weariness in her shoulders now, a kind of resignation that had not been there before. The earlier intensity had dulled, leaving her looking as if the weight of the universe was slowly crushing her. She didn't respond at first. Instead, her eyes flicked across the data, as if searching for something she knew was there but couldn't quite reach. "I didn't want you to find out," she said quietly, her voice heavy with regret. She inhaled sharply, her breath sharp in the stillness of the room. "But I can't keep this from you anymore." Aaron stood frozen in place, his gaze locked on her. "Keep what from me?" Kayla finally turned to him, her face drawn, pale under the harsh light. "The truth," she whispered, "about who I am." He opened his mouth to speak, but the words caught in his throat. The truth? Hadn't they already uncovered everything? The storm, the shadow, the enemy that was hunting her. What more could there be? "I am not just a protector," Kayla continued, her voice so quiet he had to strain to hear. "I was sent here. I was chosen." Aaron's stomach twisted. Chosen by whom? By them? Kayla nodded slowly. By the Zainari. They sent me to ensure their interests, to eliminate any threats to their power. Her eyes dropped to the floor. And that includes humanity. Aaron felt his heart stop, his breath caught in his chest. His mind raced, processing the words that had just been spoken. "You're telling me you were sent to destroy us?" Kayla's gaze snapped back to his, fury flashing in her eyes. "No!" She took a step forward, her voice rising in intensity. I was sent to protect you. But protecting you means something different now. The Zainari, they don't want just to control the galaxy anymore. They want to erase it. I failed. I was supposed to stop this from happening. Her voice trembled, her resolve shattering for just a moment. Aaron's mind reeled. Every word was a blow, each one harder than the last. He tried to find the words to speak, to make sense of it all, but they caught in his throat. What had he been protecting? A fragile colony, yes, but more than that, he had been protecting a lie. I wasn't supposed to care, Kayla murmured, her voice breaking. But I do. I've come to care about this place. About you. The last words hung between them, a heavy weight. Aaron swallowed hard, his throat dry. This was more than just a betrayal of his people. This was a betrayal of everything Kayla had been. The warrior sent to destroy, now standing before him, a woman torn between loyalty to her own species and the humanity she had grown to protect. I don't know if I can stop them, Kayla said, her voice raw with exhaustion, but I have to try. Aaron stared at her, searching her face for any hint of doubt, but all he saw was determination. Fear, yes, but also a desperate will to survive. He had never seen her like this, vulnerable and broken in a way he hadn't thought possible. It made her more human in his eyes, more than just the ruthless soldier who had walked into their lives. There has to be another way, Aaron said, his voice firm despite the fear that clawed at his chest. You're not alone in this. We'll fight. We'll find a way. Kayla shook her head, her eyes narrowing in thought. There's no more time for fighting, she said softly. I was wrong to think I could protect you all. I was wrong to think the Zainari would allow me to keep this secret. They'll destroy everything. The room was silent for a long moment. Aaron could feel the weight of those words, like the air had thickened, pulling the breath from his lungs. Outside, the storm raged, growing ever closer. It wasn't just a storm anymore. It was a countdown, a ticking clock, the end approaching with every passing second. I've been hiding something, Kayla said, breaking the silence. There's a weapon. The Zainari, they've hidden it beneath the surface of this planet. What weapon? Aaron asked, his mind struggling to catch up. Kayla's eyes were distant now, haunted. It's not just a weapon. It's a key to a power that could destroy everything, including the Zainari themselves. That's why they're coming here. They know I've found it. Aaron's stomach churned as he processed the revelation. They weren't just fighting for survival. They were fighting for the very heart of the universe, for something far older and more powerful than either the Zainari or humanity could understand. I can't stop it alone, Kayla said, her voice barely above a whisper. But if we can reach the heart of the planet, we might be able to destroy the key before they can use it. Aaron's thoughts raced as the plan took shape, jagged and fragmented. If they succeeded, it could save the galaxy. But if they failed, then we die. Kayla finished his thought. The air was charged with the unspoken truth between them. Failure wasn't just an option, it was an inevitability, but it was a risk they would have to take. There was no other choice. Kayla's gaze softened as she looked at Aaron, her expression a mix of exhaustion and determination. I may never get another chance, she said, her voice cracking. This is my last shot at redemption. Aaron nodded, his heart heavy. There was no turning back now. What had begun as a desperate mission to save a colony was now a fight for the future of everything, and if they couldn't succeed, they would become just another forgotten story in the cold, empty expanse of the universe. We do this together, Aaron said, the words firm, even as his heart raced. Kayla nodded, her lips trembling with emotion as she turned to face the door. Together, they would make their stand. The storm had finally arrived. The winds howled like the wails of a dying world, shaking the brittle walls of the colony's command center. Outside the surface of Arcos was a chaotic blur, the planet's dying atmosphere a storm of dust and ash. The last hope of humanity clung to the edge of oblivion, and inside that small, flickering space, Aaron could feel the weight of every choice he had made, and everyone still left to make. Kayla stood in front of the sealed blast door, her profile bathed in the harsh glow of the emergency lights. She was no longer the warrior who had arrived, cold and distant. She was something else now, something human, something that had learned to care. In the dim light, he could see the exhaustion etched on her face, the lines of strain beneath her eyes. They had fought together through impossible odds, but now, as the moment of truth loomed, there was a finality to her presence. "I won't be able to follow you," she said softly, her voice filled with a quiet sadness. "Once we activate the weapon, I'll be the one who has to stay behind. The Zenari will never forgive me for this." Aaron's throat tightened as he took a slow step toward her. The weight of her sacrifice was not lost on him. He had known it was coming, yet now that it was real, he could feel the sting of it. He reached out, his hand brushing against her arm. An anchor, a reminder that they had been through so much together. "We'll make sure it's worth it," he replied, his voice steady, though his heart was anything but. "We'll give them a reason to remember us." Kayla turned to face him, her eyes searching his, a deep understanding between them. There was no time left for words, no space left for regrets. The choices had been made, and now it was time for the final act. Behind them, the countdown was ticking, relentless and merciless. The weapon was close. They had found it, deep within the catacombs beneath the colony. A dormant force, powerful enough to alter the course of the galaxy, waiting for a trigger. A trigger they were about to pull. Aaron felt his heart race as he glanced back toward the terminal. The weapon's energy was building, crackling in the air, sending waves of heat that made his skin tingle. They had managed to keep the Zenari at bay long enough, but it was only a matter of time before they found their way to the center. Once the key was activated, there would be no going back. The silence that followed was suffocating. Aaron stepped away from Kayla, the weight of the decision pressing down on him. It wasn't just the future of the colony at stake. It was the future of everything they knew. "We have one shot," Kayla said, her voice a whisper now, barely audible over the storm outside. "If this doesn't work, if I fail, you'll have to finish it. You'll have to—" Aaron met her gaze, holding her words in his chest. He understood. The fate of the galaxy lay in their hands, and in the hands of a single, irreversible choice. They couldn't afford failure. Not now. Not after everything they had been through. He took a deep breath, his mind clear despite the rising tension. "We do this together. No matter what happens next, you're not alone." The words hung in the air between them, a bond forged in the fire of battle and now tempered by the heavy silence of impending sacrifice. They had made it this far together. They would see it through. Kayla nodded, her lips pressing into a thin line. She looked down at the control panel, her fingers dancing across the buttons one last time. With a soft click, the final sequence was activated. The entire room trembled. A low hum, like the growl of a distant thunderstorm, began to rise from beneath the earth. Energy pulsed through the air, thrumming with power, and for a brief, fleeting moment, the room was bathed in a light so bright it nearly blinded him. And then, as quickly as it had begun, the storm stopped. Everything was still. The hum faded into silence, leaving only the sound of their ragged breathing. Aaron turned toward Kayla, his pulse pounding in his ears. The weapon had been activated, but at what cost? Had they really stopped the Zenari from destroying everything? Or had they merely triggered a new nightmare? Kayla's shoulders slumped as the tension bled from her body, exhaustion and relief warring for dominance in her expression. She was shaking now, barely able to stand, but she held herself upright, her eyes locking with his. "It's done," she said, her voice barely a breath. The relief didn't come. Not yet. The monitors around them flickered, static crackling as if the very air itself was holding its breath. And then, without warning, the main screen blared to life, displaying a flashing message in bright red letters. "Zenari fleet detected." A chill ran down Aaron's spine. The Zanari were already here. They had found them. A new wave of panic surged through the command center, but Kayla stood frozen, her hands gripping the console as though it was the only thing keeping her from falling apart. "They're here," Aaron whispered, the finality of the words sinking in. "Yes," Kayla replied, her voice steady despite the rising terror. "But we have a chance now." They could see it. Through the crackling static, through the ever-encroaching chaos, they saw the truth. The Zainari fleet was coming, but the weapon had triggered something else, a shift in the balance, a ripple in the forces of the galaxy. The Zainari were no longer the only threat to their survival. They had awakened something far greater. Kayla's eyes softened, her lips curving in a bitter, almost sad smile. "The future is ours to fight for, and now it's yours to shape." Aaron stood there, staring at the flashing red letters, the weight of everything pressing against him. They had done it. The galaxy was still alive, still breathing, still fighting, but they were not out of danger yet. They never would be. The storm outside raged once more, but this time it felt different. It felt like a beginning, like something new, something greater than either of them had imagined. "We'll make it through this," Aaron said, his voice firm, though a part of him knew it was a lie. Kayla nodded, her gaze meeting his with quiet resolve. "Yes," she said softly, "we will." And as the storm raged on, they knew the battle was not yet over. But they had fought together. And for now, that was enough. The sky over the Sierra Nevada mountain range was moonless, its inky expanse glittering with distant stars. Beneath this celestial dome, a faint ripple of light shimmered in the air, like the surface of a disturbed pond. Anyone watching might have dismissed it as a trick of the atmosphere or a passing satellite, if they noticed it at all. But this was no natural phenomenon. The ripple coalesced, its edges sharpening into a sleek, obsidian form that defied human comprehension. Vera's vessel, a masterpiece of Jiran engineering, hovered silently above the jagged peaks. Its surface was a paradox, both solid and shifting, like molten glass caught mid-flow. No sound marked its descent. No exhaust marred the air. It was a ghost, slipping into a world unprepared to see it. Inside, Vera stood at the helm, her tall, lithe figure illuminated by the soft glow of the ship's control interfaces. Her skin, a pale, opalescent hue that shimmered faintly in the low light, marked her as undeniably alien. Her silver eyes moved methodically over the readings displayed in a language far older than any on Earth. She tilted her head slightly, listening to the ship's telemetry as if it were a melody only she could hear. "All parameters within acceptable ranges," she murmured, her voice smooth, almost mechanical. She stepped away from the console, her strides graceful but deliberate, betraying no trace of hesitation. The air around her vibrated faintly, responding to her presence. With a flick of her hand, a section of the wall dissolved into transparency, revealing the sprawling, unbroken wilderness below. "Primitive," she muttered, the word curling in her throat with a touch of disdain. Yet there was something off. Her eyes narrowed, and her lips pressed into a thin line. The readings she'd been analyzing since her arrival at Earth's orbit had already proven baffling. This planet, this backwater outpost of evolution, should not have been worth her attention. And yet here she was, sent by the Jiran High Council to observe what her people had dismissed as an anomaly. Her orders had been clear: remain unseen, collect data, and return. No interference, no entanglements. This was not an assignment of importance, but one of routine, a box to check before moving on to more consequential systems. Still, something gnawed at the edges of her otherwise impeccable logic. Her sensors, capable of detecting subatomic disturbances, had recorded a series of faint anomalies emanating from the surface, patterns that seemed random at first, but slowly resolved into something unsettlingly familiar. They echoed the harmonic signatures of Jiran quantum stabilizers, technology that should have been eons beyond human comprehension. Her gaze drifted to the shimmering display panel beside her, where a three-dimensional model of the Earth rotated slowly. She reached out, and the image shifted, zooming in on the anomaly's epicenter. A rugged patch of wilderness deep in the mountains, far from human civilization. "Explain," she commanded the ship's AI, her tone clipped. "Insufficient data," the voice responded, cool and indifferent. For the first time in decades, irritation prickled at Vera's carefully maintained calm. Insufficient data was an unacceptable state of affairs. She activated the ship's cloaking mechanism and initiated the descent. The vessel responded instantly, adjusting its trajectory with the precision of a scalpel. As the ground drew closer, she prepared to deploy her observation pod, a small, stealthy craft designed for discreet planetary excursions. But then, something unexpected happened. A sharp, piercing vibration echoed through the ship, not mechanical but organic, resonating in a frequency she could feel in her chest. Her eyes widened slightly. The ship's defenses hadn't been breached, but the sound, if it could be called that, seemed to originate from the anomaly itself. For a fraction of a second, her surroundings flickered. The console displays glitched, symbols twisting into unrecognizable forms. Her ship, a vessel of absolute technological superiority, appeared vulnerable. She froze, her hand hovering over the pod's release mechanism. The sensation passed quickly, the displays returning to normal as if nothing had happened. But Vera knew better. "Curious," she whispered to herself, the word tinged with something close to unease. She adjusted her plan, deploying an array of micro-drones to survey the area before setting foot on the surface herself. The drones zipped silently into the night, invisible against the darkness. She watched their feeds as they mapped the terrain, their lenses capturing every detail with ruthless efficiency. The anomaly's source came into focus. A narrow canyon shrouded in mist, its walls etched with jagged patterns that bore an uncanny resemblance to Jiren script. It was impossible. Vera's pulse quickened, a rare occurrence for a being whose emotions were tempered by centuries of rational thought. As she prepared to descend, her sensors registered movement near the canyon's edge. A figure, a lone human, was making its way toward the anomaly. The individual was clad in weathered clothes, carrying what appeared to be a crude wooden staff. An involuntary frown crossed Vera's face. What could this creature hope to achieve here? Yet as she zoomed in on the figure, something about their gait, their posture, felt wrong. The human stopped abruptly, tilting their head as if listening to an unseen voice. Then, to Vera's shock, they turned and stared directly at her ship. Impossible. The cloaking field was perfect. The human shouldn't have been able to perceive her presence, let alone locate her exact position. And yet, their gaze was unflinching, as though they were peering straight through the layers of advanced technology, shielding her from detection. The figure raised a hand, pointing at the ship. A sudden burst of static disrupted her visual feed, the interference crackling like distant thunder. Vera felt something she hadn't felt in centuries, a chill crawling down her spine. For the first time, the observer realized she was being observed. Vera stood motionless in the observation chamber, her eyes locked on the display. The human figure, weathered, deliberate, and impossibly aware, had not moved since it pointed at her ship. It remained at the edge of the canyon, gazing upward with a calm intensity that defied logic. The Jiren vessel remained cloaked, its crystalline hull absorbing and refracting light into nothingness. Even the most advanced human technology couldn't detect it. Yet here was this anomaly, staring as though it could see through the void. Vera's logical mind demanded answers. How could a being so primitive, so bound by biology, penetrate layers of cloaking technology that operated on dimensions humans barely understood? The question gnawed at her as she reviewed the footage for the third time, scrutinizing every detail. "Life signs?" she asked the ship's AI, her voice clipped. "Stable," the disembodied voice replied. "Subject's neural activity is within baseline parameters for Homo sapiens." And the interference? Localized anomaly. Source remains undetermined. Vera's frown deepened. Her people's mastery of quantum harmonics had rendered most phenomena explainable. But this eluded her grasp. She activated the drones still hovering above the canyon. Their feeds flickered to life, showing the figure from multiple angles. Despite their advanced cloaking mechanisms, the human turned toward each drone in turn, as if aware of their presence. "Impossible," Vera whispered. The human suddenly moved, stepping closer to the canyon's edge. They knelt, placing a hand against the jagged rock, their head tilting as though listening to the stone itself. A faint glow emanated from the point of contact, a warm golden hue that contrasted starkly with the cold blue light of Jiren technology. The glow pulsed once, twice, and then subsided. "Trace energy signature," Vera commanded. The AI hesitated, a rare occurrence. "Signature does not match any known energy source in the Jiren database." Her pulse quickened. That database spanned millennia of exploration and cataloging across galaxies. For it to return, nothing was unthinkable. "Deploy a resonance probe," she ordered. A small silver orb detached from the ship and descended silently toward the canyon. Its surface shimmered as it analyzed the anomaly, mapping energy fields and molecular structures. But as it neared the human, the orb faltered. Its movements became erratic, its glow dimming before it spiraled out of control and crashed into the canyon floor. "Unacceptable," Vera muttered, her voice colder now. The human glanced at the fallen probe, then looked back at the invisible ship. A faint smile tugged at the corners of their lips. That expression was the final affront. Whatever this anomaly was, it was no accident. Vera descended to the planet herself, the observation pod slicing through the darkness like a shadow, made tangible. She landed just beyond the canyon, her presence shielded by a layer of electromagnetic distortion that rendered her invisible to human senses. As she stepped onto Earth soil, a strange sensation rippled through her, a subtle hum, as if the ground itself were alive with dormant energy. She dismissed it as atmospheric interference, her focus fixed on the anomaly ahead. The figure had not moved from the canyon's edge, their posture unchanged. Vera approached cautiously, her stealth field active, her movements silent. But as she drew closer, the hum intensified. When she was within 20 paces, the human spoke. "You've come at last." The words froze her in place. They were spoken in perfect Jiren, an impossibility that sent a jolt of shock through her. Vera deactivated the stealth field, her form materializing like a phantom from the air. She stood tall, her silver eyes narrowing as she scrutinized the human. "You are not what you appear to be," she said, her voice edged with suspicion. The human turned to face her fully. Their face was lined with age, but their eyes were sharp, almost luminous. "Neither are you." The answer was disarming in its simplicity. Vera took a measured step forward, her posture regal and unyielding. "How do you know my language?" The human chuckled, a sound rich with amusement and something else, something deeper. "Your kind leaves echoes wherever you go. The earth remembers." This was no ordinary human. Vera's mind raced, parsing through every possible explanation. Could this being be a hybrid, a product of genetic manipulation? Or perhaps some latent mutation had given them access to abilities beyond their species' norm? "Explain yourself," Vera demanded, her tone sharper now. The human smile faded, replaced by an expression of quiet gravity. "Your arrival was foreseen. Long before your ship darkened our skies, the currents of this place whispered of you. You seek answers, but you will not like what you find." Vera's hand twitched toward her holstered analyzer, but she stopped herself. This encounter required caution, not aggression. "Your words are riddles," she said, her voice steady. "If you know of me, then you know I have no patience for such games." The human inclined their head, acknowledging her impatience without apology. You are not the first of your kind to come here, nor will you be the last. But you are the first to listen. Before Vera could respond, the ground beneath them rumbled. The glow from the canyon walls flared to life, illuminating the jagged script that so closely resembled Jiren markings. The human stepped back, gesturing toward the light. Look closely, they said. This is what you seek. Vera approached the edge of the canyon, her gaze fixed on the glowing script. Her analyzer buzzed with activity, parsing fragments of data. The patterns were similar to Jiren harmonics, but incomplete, as though they were a nascent form of the advanced technology her people wielded. What is this place? She asked, her voice softer now, tinged with awe despite herself. It is a beginning, the human replied, and perhaps an end. As the glow intensified, Vera felt a deep, resonant vibration in her core, a sensation that seemed to reach beyond her physical form. For the first time, she wondered if she had underestimated this world and its people. The mystery had deepened, and with it, so had the stakes. The glow from the canyon walls pulsed in uneven intervals, casting fragmented light onto the jagged cliffs. Vera remained still, her silver eyes darting over the illuminated script. The markings were unmistakable, an echo of her people's ancient glyphs, older than the Jiren Council itself. Yet they were raw, unrefined, and brimming with chaotic potential. The human stood a few steps behind her, their presence quiet but unyielding, like the weight of an unseen tide. This cannot be, Vera murmured, more to herself than her enigmatic companion. Her analyzer was useless, overwhelmed by the complexity of the energy signatures. It offered no coherent data, only streams of garbled information. The human, who had yet to offer their name, stepped closer, their weathered face lit with a faint glow. You begin to see it, don't you? Vera turned sharply, her expression cold and controlled. What I see are echoes of my people's technology, on a planet that shouldn't even have the capacity to dream of it. The human tilted their head, considering her words. And yet here it is. Her jaw tightened. The cryptic responses were grating against her logical mind, a dissonance she couldn't shake. Explain, she demanded, her tone like the edge of a blade. The human's gaze flickered toward the canyon. This place is not unique. There are others like it, across this world, hidden in places untouched by time. They lie dormant, waiting for the right moment. Vera's mind raced. Dormant? The implication was staggering. If these sites existed, then Earth's history was far more complex than even her advanced records indicated. She felt the weight of her mission shift, her role as an observer suddenly inadequate. And the markings? She pressed. How do you know them? The human met her gaze, their eyes steady and ancient. We don't learn them, we remember. Before she could probe further, the canyon trembled violently. A low resonant hum emanated from the glowing walls, rising in intensity. Vera instinctively stepped back, her body coiled for action. What is happening? She asked, her voice sharp. The human didn't answer. Instead, they raised their hands, palms outward, as if in surrender or communion with the light. The glow flared brighter, the markings now shifting and twisting like living things. Vera's advanced hearing picked up faint whispers, a language she couldn't place, resonating in frequencies beyond the range of human speech. The sound wrapped around her, filling her with a disquiet she hadn't felt in centuries. The light surged upward, forming a column that pierced the sky. For a moment, Vera's ship, cloaked and hidden, shimmered into view as the energy wave disrupted its invisibility. The human glanced upward, their expression unreadable. This is not natural, Vera hissed, her voice laced with suspicion. The human turned to her, their face now illuminated fully. Their features seemed sharper, almost otherworldly in the golden light. It is not unnatural either. The energy dissipated as quickly as it had erupted, leaving an eerie silence in its wake. The canyon returned to its previous state, the glow fading into faint embers. but Vera could feel it. A presence, a lingering charge in the air, as if the land itself had awakened. As they moved away from the canyon, the human finally spoke. "You are here because your kind sensed it, the awakening." Vera's steps faltered. Awakening? Of what? The human smiled faintly, but it was not an expression of comfort. Of potential. This world holds more than your calculations can fathom. The arrogance she had carried for so long began to crack under the weight of the human's words and the undeniable reality she had witnessed. Potential is meaningless without understanding. What I've seen here defies reason. Explain it to me, or this cooperation ends. The human stopped, turning to face her fully. Your people think they are the first to wield power, to shape worlds. But they are not. This place, this earth, is older than you realize. What lies beneath its surface predates even the stars your kind claims to control. Vera's heart stilled. If the human spoke the truth, it meant her understanding of the universe's history was fundamentally flawed. Why here? Why now? The human's expression darkened. Because the balance is shifting, your arrival has accelerated it. The question is not why, but what you will do with what you've found. Vera returned to her ship, her mind a storm of contradictions. She replayed the events in the canyon, analyzing every detail for answers. But the more she dissected, the clearer it became. This was no isolated anomaly. Her thoughts were interrupted by an incoming transmission. The Jiren High Council's insignia flickered on her display, a fractal design that shifted with an elegance that belied its authority. "Report," came the voice of High Counselor Ra Lin, her tone imperious and cold. Vera hesitated, a rare lapse in her calculated demeanor. "The situation is more complex than anticipated. I have uncovered evidence of advanced energy harmonics, but the source is anomalous." The High Counselor's eyes narrowed, her silver irises piercing through the screen. "Elaborate." "There are structures, patterns, on this planet that resonate with Jiren signatures. They are not of human origin, yet they are here." Ra Lin's expression darkened. "You are authorized to escalate your investigation. If this poses a threat to Jiren Dominion, you will neutralize it." The transmission ended abruptly, leaving Vera alone with the weight of her orders. Neutralize. The word echoed in her mind, sharp and final. It was the way of her people, to control or eliminate anything that threatened their supremacy. But as she thought of the canyon, of the glowing script, and the human's calm defiance, doubt crept in. She stood at a crossroads. The Jiren way demanded obedience, but something deeper, something she didn't yet fully understand, urged her to question. The stakes had changed. What began as a mission of observation was now a test of her loyalty, her beliefs, and her understanding of the universe itself, and she wasn't sure she would pass. Vera stared at the shimmering console of her ship, her thoughts a tangled web of doubt and defiance. The High Council's orders were clear: neutralize any potential threat. But Earth had proven far more than a threat. It was a riddle she could not yet solve. The human's cryptic warnings echoed in her mind. Your kind leaves echoes wherever you go. The Earth remembers. She turned to the ship's AI, its soothing voice a rare constant in the storm of uncertainty. Begin a planetary resonance scan. Focus on harmonic anomalies, anything that matches the signatures in the canyon. Understood, the AI replied. Its crystalline core pulsed as it processed the command, sending out quantum threads to sweep across the planet's surface. The results began to pour in moments later. The map of Earth lit up with points of light, dozens, then hundreds, spreading across continents and oceans. Each represented a dormant site like the one in the canyon, pulsating faintly with the same raw, untamed energy. Vera inhaled sharply. This was no isolated anomaly. It was a network, a web of latent power spanning the globe. Before she could fully process the implications, an alert chimed. Incoming transmission from the surface, the AI announced. She stiffened. The signal was impossible to trace, originating from nowhere and everywhere at once. Patch it through, she said. The human's face appeared on the display, their expression calm but tinged with urgency. You've seen it now, haven't you? How are you doing this? Vera demanded, her voice sharp. The human ignored her question. The sites are awakening. Your arrival has disrupted the balance. If you don't act, the consequences will be catastrophic, for both our worlds. Vera's frustration boiled over. And what exactly am I supposed to do? You speak in riddles while my people expect answers. Do you even understand what's at stake? The human's gaze hardened. I understand more than you realize. This is not the first time your kind has meddled with forces they cannot control. Before she could respond, the transmission cut out, leaving her alone once more. Vera descended to another site, this one hidden deep within a dense forest. The air was heavy with moisture, the ground carpeted in moss and ancient roots. The site's energy was palpable, a low hum that resonated in her chest. The glyphs here were different, more complex, their patterns spiraling in ways that seemed to defy geometry. She crouched to examine them, her fingers brushing against the cold, glowing stone. Her analyzer chirped, attempting to decode the markings. As she watched, fragments of data began to form on the display. Words, symbols, fragments of meaning. Origin, Jiren. Era, pre-ascension, the AI reported. Pre-ascension. The term sent a chill down her spine. It referred to the earliest days of Jiren civilization, before her people had mastered their current technology, before they had risen to dominate the galaxy. This can't be right, she whispered, and yet the evidence was undeniable. These glyphs were ancient, predating her people's recorded history. The implications were staggering. Had the Jiren once been here, shaping Earth's destiny in ways they had long forgotten? Or was it something even older, something her ancestors had encountered and tried to suppress? Her thoughts were interrupted by movement in the trees. She rose swiftly, her hand hovering over the weapon at her side. The human emerged from the shadows, their presence as unsettling as ever. You're beginning to see the truth, they said. Enough games, Vera snapped. If you know something, speak plainly. The human stepped closer, their expression unreadable. The power beneath this world is not yours to control. It is older than your kind, older than mine. It was meant to remain dormant, but your people's arrival has disrupted its slumber. Then what is it? Vera demanded. The human hesitated, as if weighing their words. It is potential. Pure, unbridled potential. It is the force that binds life to creation, that gives rise to ingenuity, resilience, and destruction alike. Your kind sought to harness it once before. The result was catastrophic. Vera's mind raced. If this was true, then her people had not only failed to learn from their past, they had erased it. The Jiren Council's obsession with control, their relentless pursuit of dominance, was built on the ashes of a history they refused to acknowledge. She took a step toward the human, her voice low and urgent. If this power awakens fully, what will happen? The human's gaze was steady. It will reshape everything. The world, the galaxy, perhaps even time itself. It will not be controlled. It will not be contained. Back aboard her ship, Vera faced a decision that clawed at the foundations of her identity. The Council's orders were clear: neutralize the threat. But neutralization in this case meant the annihilation of an entire planet. A preemptive strike to ensure Jiren supremacy remained unchallenged. Her fingers hovered over the ship's communication console. She could send the signal, summon reinforcements, and wipe this world clean of its mysteries. It would be the logical choice, the safe choice. But she couldn't shake the human's words, the weight of the truth she had uncovered. Earth was not merely a threat. It was a mirror, reflecting the flaws and hubris of her own people. She turned away from the console, her mind made up. AI, she said, her voice steady. Prepare a containment field. We're going to the central node. The AI hesitated. High Council authorization is required for such actions. Override protocol, Vera snapped. This is my mission. As the ship descended toward the largest node on the planet, a site buried deep beneath an ancient mountain range, Vera felt the weight of her choice pressing down on her. She was defying the Council, risking everything for a species she had once deemed unworthy of notice. But as the mountain loomed closer, its hidden power thrumming like a heartbeat, she knew there was no turning back. The mysteries were unraveling, and with them came a truth she could no longer ignore. The fate of Earth and the galaxy were intertwined, and she was at the center of it all. The mountain loomed like a sentinel, its jagged peaks piercing the clouds as Vera's ship descended. Hidden beneath its ancient stone was the central node, the heart of the energy network she had spent days uncovering. The air itself seemed alive, charged with an energy that buzzed at the edges of perception. Vera stood at the open hatch of her vessel, the human beside her. Though she had yet to understand how they always appeared at the crucial moments, she had long since stopped questioning it. There were greater mysteries to unravel now. "Are you certain about this?" the human asked, their voice calm but weighted with caution. Vera tightened the clasp of her metallic suit, the silver fabric shifting fluidly around her. "Certainty has no place here. I move forward because there is no other option." The human nodded, a faint flicker of approval in their gaze. "Then let us finish this." The descent into the mountain was slow and treacherous. The air grew heavier as they moved deeper, the walls around them pulsing faintly with the same otherworldly glow as the canyon glyphs. Vera's scanner displayed erratic readings, the harmonics escalating beyond the limits of even her advanced Xiran technology. "This place feels alive," she murmured, her voice low. "It is," the human replied, "alive in a way neither of us can truly comprehend." They reached a vast chamber, its ceiling lost in shadow. At its center was the node, a colossal crystalline structure that seemed to defy logic. Its facets shifted and reformed, as if the crystal were breathing, responding to their presence. Glyphs swirled across its surface in an intricate dance, too fast to follow. Vera stepped closer, her every instinct warning her to retreat, even as her curiosity pushed her forward. The energy radiating from the node was overwhelming, filling her with a mixture of awe and dread. "What happens if we do nothing?" she asked, her voice barely audible. The human's expression darkened. "The energy will continue to awaken, spreading across the planet and beyond. If it's not guided, if it's not tempered, it will consume everything in its path." "And if we interfere?" The human didn't answer immediately. "That depends on the choices you make. This is your burden, Vera. Yours to bear and yours to decide." As she approached the node, the glyphs began to slow, their chaotic dance giving way to patterns she could almost recognize. Her analyzer chirped, struggling to keep up with the influx of data. "AI," she said softly, "initiate a harmonic synchronization. We need to understand its core frequency." The AI hesitated. This action could destabilize the structure. "Proceed with caution." "Proceed," she commanded. A beam of light shot from her wrist device, connecting to the crystal. The chamber trembled violently, and for a moment, Vera feared the entire mountain would collapse. But then, the trembling subsided, replaced by a deep, resonant hum. The glyphs coalesced into a single, massive symbol, a Xiran sigil she hadn't seen in millennia. "Do you recognize it?" the human asked. "Yes," she replied, her voice hollow. "It's a mark of unity, a symbol of balance from the earliest days of my people, before we became conquerors." The node responded to her recognition, its light softening. Images began to form within its crystalline depths, scenes of a distant past. She saw her ancestors, not as the rulers of a vast empire, but as explorers, their curiosity untainted by the hunger for control. They stood on a world bathed in golden light, their hands outstretched toward beings of pure energy. Together, They built something, a harmony that connected worlds, species, and minds. But then the harmony fractured. Greed and fear twisted the Jiren, driving them to claim the energy for themselves. The resulting chaos destroyed the fragile balance, leaving only fragments behind, fragments that now lay dormant within Earth's crust. Vera staggered back, the weight of the revelation crushing her. Her people's arrogance had caused this. They had not discovered Earth. They had abandoned it, leaving behind a legacy of destruction that now threatened to awaken. The human placed a steadying hand on her shoulder. "The node is waiting, Vera. It needs a decision." She turned to them, her voice trembling. "What decision? I don't know how to fix this." "You do," they said gently. "You've always known. But it will require sacrifice." Her mind raced. The node was attuned to her. It recognized her as Jiren, as both heir and perpetrator of the imbalance. She could guide it, temper its energy, and restore the harmony her people had shattered. But doing so would cost her. The energy would consume her entirely, leaving nothing behind. For a long moment, she stood in silence, her gaze fixed on the glowing crystal. Her entire life had been defined by superiority, by the belief that she was above the chaos of lesser beings. But now, standing at the precipice, she saw the truth. "I will do it," she said finally. The human nodded, their expression somber. "You will not be forgotten." Vera stepped forward, placing her hands on the crystal's surface. The energy surged around her, enveloping her in its light. She felt it probing her, testing her resolve. "I will guide you," she whispered. "I will restore what was broken." The energy responded, flowing through her in waves of searing heat and blinding light. Her physical form began to dissolve, her essence merging with the node. In her final moments, she glimpsed a vision, a world reborn, its harmony restored. The network of nodes pulsed softly, their power tempered and balanced. Earth would not be destroyed, it would thrive, a beacon of potential for all who sought it. As her consciousness faded, she felt no regret. She had chosen to protect, to heal, to honor the legacy her people had abandoned. When the light subsided, the chamber was silent. The node's glow had dimmed, its energy stable once more. The humans stood alone, their expression unreadable. "Thank you, Vera," they said softly, their voice echoing in the stillness. They turned and began the long ascent out of the mountain, the burden of the past lifted but not forgotten. Above, the first rays of dawn broke across the sky, bathing the world in golden light. Vera's sacrifice had not only saved Earth, but had also set the stage for a new era, one of understanding, balance, and the possibility of redemption.